and they were in Singapore when we first met, and then we started talking about LGBTQ, and they were like, "Hey, we're a couple," and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And so they joined me for the Out and Equal conference in Las Vegas, and we've gotten to hang out and teach together and become friends. And I've shared with them about the guild, and they share a lot of common interests. So I'm excited that you are here. And if you want to just come off mute and introduce yourselves, that'd be awesome.
Hey everyone, I'm the Tay of the Tay and Val.
And this is the Val of Tay and Val. Yeah.
Craig has been telling us about your meetings for months, and we just couldn't do it because it always coincides with our coaching sessions. So today we're excited to be here with open hearts and curious minds to just connect and see what happens.
Yeah, we appreciated Craig inviting us into this community. We've had the pleasure to also meet with Frank on his property and toured like a 4-hour tour, which was amazing. And I think in connected with how do you say his name, Alan? Before, and then glad to finally be able to put a face to her name as well. So thank you all for having us. We're really looking forward to this meeting, as well as learning from the community and exchanging insights and wisdom.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so Sarah, I should introduce you to Frank Foti, who's he's somewhere on your screen. Maybe you should wave, Frank, or something. Okay, that's Frank Foti. So he has this enormous project. I think of it as enormous. He probably thinks it's just something he's passing off, little thing going on. But he has, as part of it, he has a farm going on, and there's a connection. I don't know exactly what things you're going to emphasize today, Sarah, but it's he's going to be our speaker for next month. And he has a farm, you have a farm, so there's sort of a connection there, and so we'll go from there. So anyway, let's start, Alon. Give us a little time so we can get centered a little bit before we start.
Thank you. Yes, if you just sit comfortably on the chair. And close your eyes or lower your gaze as you want to. And just experience the breath going up and down. And as you exhale, sense the connection with your seat and through your legs and feet with the ground. And through that, through Mother Earth. And the energy that may come from Mother Earth through you. And experience a connection with what is above your head. Father Sky, Source. And how these two connections meet in your heart. And from your heart, although your eyes are closed or your gaze is lowered, you may also sense this community. And experience the gratefulness of being together. And open your eyes and just look at the screen for a minute or so in silence. Thank you. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Alon. Appreciate that. So I don't want to take a lot of time in introducing Sara, because you all, and the session, because you all, if you're here, you read what I wrote about what we're doing here. Suffice to say that native teachings and issues and so on have been very important as we move through all the sessions we've had in EASIG. And it comes in different forms. I mean, some people find native teachings to be really core to them and core to connecting with nature. Some are concerned about issues that come from our history with native peoples. And some have done collaborative work in various projects. In fact, almost any projects on the land involve getting in touch with these teachings and these peoples. There's a Supreme Court case going on now in the Southwest, which is just amazing, in which native peoples there are trying, Navajo basically, are trying to get make sure that they have access to the water of the Colorado, which they haven't had very much before. So now I'm going off script here. I said I was going to be brief about this, so I think I'll be brief about Sara, because you saw these things, and it's just, if I start to talk about all the things she does and all the things she's done and what she represents, we would take the whole session. So you saw these things, and I don't want to oversell her too, you know. So I just really appreciate your being with us, Sara, with all you're doing, and I give it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I promise to try not to let you down today. I will do my best.
That's not possible.
But thank you for your really warm words and the warm sentiment that you carry, kind of, you know, as you beautifully host me into this session and into this circle. So thank you for that. And thanks, Frank. Apparently we are farmers and we should meet. Let's do that. Thank you. I'm going to start in kind of an unusual way. Can somebody demystify the acronym EASIG for me?
Environmental Action Special Interest Group.
I see.
That as part of Conscious Leadership Guild.
Yes, of course. I've been playing around in the Leadership Guild circles for a little over a year now, and I've been dying to ask that question. So thank you. Nothing like a good knowledge exchange to get us started.
Right.
But thank you very much for doing that. It kind of helps to set the stage and kind of get the tone going a little bit better. Thank you for the starting off in a deep breath and in a good way. I really appreciate that. I think especially today as we welcome the next round of the storm again into this beautiful space in Northern California that many of us find ourselves. It comes with a good deep breath, you know, kind of that mixed bag, that mixed blessing of what moving walls of rain can mean for people. But especially for the land and the landscape. And I think in a lot of ways, we're here to talk about the land. Michael was just expressing deep interest in and kind of sharing the tonality of some of the conversations that this circle has had over a bit of time that seems to carry a reflection or even its own rhythm, if you will, with connections to some of these conversations and topics that are carried within kind of what we will call today the Native American cultural space. So, hi, I'm Sara. I come from Yaqui and Apache ancestry on my father's side, and Irish and other mixed amazing European ancestry on my mother's side. And you know, it's really important to carry all of that into any given space, because you can't leave part of who you are behind. And in my circles, it's very common for people to show up in their introductions and you know, hi, my name is, and I come from this nation, or I come from this space. And it might be less common for folks in our spaces to claim all of the other ones too. But in a way, it's part of kind of how I enter circles. I can only ever show up in a circle with carrying the voice of myself and carrying the knowledge that I have been given permission to share in the good ways that I know how, and in the best ways that I can try. So as grateful and deeply honored as I am today to show up to carry Native American conversations, I start with the caveat that I am just me. And in the continental United States alone, there's over 576 different federally recognized tribes. That doesn't include the additional 200 plus that are not in recognition. And of that huge scope of diversity, over 100 of those different tribes were just inside of the state of California. Gives you a kind of a sense of what it means to have that scope of language, song, ceremony, connection to land, you know, food traditions. All of those things were different amongst all of those different people. And so one of the places that we'll start today is with this kind of collective agreement that Native America is a myth. Okay, there is no such thing. There's no such thing as Native American people or American Indian people or Indigenous people. If you kind of sit down and hang out with most of us, we are Yaqui or Dene or Anishinaabe or Lakota or Quapaw, Shawnee, Blackfeet. So the reason we start in that space is to kind of also help us with this tonality, especially when we enter into conversations around environmental justice, because it seems that there's this kind of sense, especially in our new socially woke world, which we're in right now, yay, go millennial world, that in this kind of reflex that we're in right now, there is this tendency to reach out to these other knowledge systems and maybe elevate them or lift them up in a way that says that they have solutions that maybe are the answers to all of our problems. And that might not necessarily be true either, right? Because what we are is not a body of collective Native American wisdom. The Yaqui people, which is the majority of my ancestry on my native side, come from the Sonoran Desert region of the Americas. Before some individual human being picked up a pencil and a piece of paper and drew a line and called that a map and called the northern part of it the United States and the southern part of it Mexico, that was our home territory. The Sonoran Desert region of the Americas is the birthplace of the Yaqui people, the Yoweme people, the Yakim. We are born of the Bakatetet Mountains, and we are named after the sound of the river that runs through our regionality. And that is our home territory. But where I stand today in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, I recognize that I'm a guest. I am standing in the original territories of the Coast Miwok people in the Northern Bay. And I work all over the Bay Area region, which is home to originally a little over 30 different groups. gives you a sense of the abundance of the environmental system that was available here to support that kind of original First Peoples in and around the space. So I am here in a couple of different aspects. I thought one of the ways we might start, because we're talking about kind of land and environmental systems, is to talk a little bit about some of the work I do. Right now, I'm the CEO of the Cultural Conservancy. The Cultural Conservancy is a native-led nonprofit organization that's been in business for almost 40 years now. We're based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we do regional, national, and international work. And one of the projects that we're most honored recently to walk through was a Land Back project, which is a beautiful kind of recognition of this new socially just woke world that we're in right now. As Native people, we recognize too that these systems are cyclical, especially with, kind of in terms of the awareness or kind of the elevation of the Indigenous conversation in the United States. It kind of rises and falls as you will. And right now we're in kind of an elevated space. We have the Deb Handland and up in administration, and we have, kind of an environmental network that is interested in sustainability conversations, which are looking into other knowledge systems to try and understand how to augment those sustainability conversations, or look for answers around those conversations, environmental connection in other spaces. So one of the ways that we do that is through our Land Justice Project and our Food Justice Network. I thought I'd show you just a couple little pictures. We can show Frank our little land area, and then maybe Frank will invite me up to his little land area and get a little tour. That'd be fun. Is that okay? Can I share some slides? Will that be all right? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go fast. We won't do them. We won't be super intense about it. But let's see what we got here. Let's see. Okay. So this just gives you a kind of quick glance. As I said before, we're the Cultural Conservancy. If you want to take a look at us, we first started in the San Francisco Bay Area. And that first dot kind of inside that big circle, that little bottom kind of what we'll call the southernmost speck there on the San Francisco Peninsula tip in the traditional Yelamu territory of the Ramaytush Ohlone people is our home office is in the Presidio. So if you're ever hanging out in San Francisco and you're running around the Presidio, come hang out. We have beautiful offices and a community resource library where folks can come in and engage with traditional knowledge systems and use those as part of their research or connection or re-engagement in some of those systems. Just that kind of middle dot inside of that circle of service, it represents kind of that second layer of land engagement service that we have. We are part of a teaching farm partnership up at the Indian Valley Organic Farm and Garden in Novato, which is in Marin County. We've been there for a little over a decade as the cultural teaching partner there, doing indigenous farming sciences and traditional heirloom and seed stewardship work. Was kind of one of the first places we got our start as a land tending organization. But really what that means is that we're an intertribal group. As I said, I'm Yaqui, one of my, I carry within our organization, we carry Seneca folks, we carry Blackfeet folks, we carry Shawnee, Quapaw, Anishinaabe, Dene. We have this wide variety of folks that represent who we are. And as a part of what that really means to the history of our service here is that that's kind of that second circle of service of the tonality of understanding Indigenous folks in the Americas, right? While we work in ancestral territories, we also are groups of people that were in relocation, whether by choice or by force. And in the realities of what that means for the San Francisco Bay Area and Oakland Bay Area spaces is that we were one of the largest urban relocation centers in the country. And so all of those 700 different tribal groups from across this great big rock all found Indigenous folks squished into this little urban center. disconnected, kind of unsure, where are you? Who are you? Walking around down the streets. Hey, look, you're a native, but whoa, how do I, what do you want to talk about? Well, I don't know. What do you want to talk about? I kind of just miss home. And those kinds of stories are part of our history. And they're part of understanding what the Circle of Service to Indigenous People means, because especially as an Indigenous organization who's based in Northern California, we have to be in good protocol. First, California Native, next, the intertribal community. That's part of how we step through and understand those dynamics. But the reality of all of those groups, whether or not you're a California Native or you're an intertribal person that's in and around most of the land spaces of California, and hey, this is probably true across the entire nation, is that there's little to no access to land or water in order to engage in land-based traditional practices, in order to engage in traditional foodways, in order to engage in everything that stems from our human relationship to the ecosystem. And that's part of what we're here trying to reconnect and revitalize. Part of who we are as an organization, and especially you'll find as you work with Indigenous groups, is reciprocity is really important to us. As Indigenous people, we're always giving back. We hold giveaways. When I got married, I had a 2-day giveaway. This is part of who we are. So as part of the way that we reflect that as an organization at the Cultural Conservancy is we run a small regranting fund. It's called our Minonibi Fund. And our small Minonibi Fund gives out about $150,000 to $200,000 in small grants to across what we call Turtle Island, which is the Americas, and Moana, our Pacific relatives, the Pacific Island relatives. And those are just small capacity building grants and project grants as a way of understanding how hard it is for small grassroots organizations and tribal people to, one, get to a philanthropic table, and two, what's a grant report? And what do they mean when they want 4 years of organizational budget history? I'm just trying to record Auntie's language because she's the last language keeper here in our community. So how do I do that? And we're there to try and help bridge some of those knowledge systems and those gaps. How do you get traditional worlds engaged in modern worlds and help those systems do well together? And that's our Minonibi Fund. Everywhere you see a little dot on that map is a place where we support a project. We're very proud of that. So land. Remember I was saying we're an intertribal organization? Okay, that's important, guys, because if you're looking to give land back or engage in land conversations with original people, intertribal organizations aren't ancestral people to the lands underneath their feet. So when an individual landowner reached out to the Cultural Conservancy and said, hey, I have this beautiful 7.6 acres of land in the heart of Sonoma County, wine, vineyard, agricultural intensity, and I'd love to give it back to Native people. Can I give it to you? We took a deep bow and said, let us connect you with those folks. Let us first connect you. You're in Sonoma County, Sebastopol. That puts you square in Coast Miwok, Southern Pomo Territory. The current federally recognized group is the Federated Indians of Great and Rancho Rio. Let us host a talking circle and some protocol and get you connected. And that's what we did. That was our first step. And for whatever reason, because they have their own projects, their own capacity issues, the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, after a couple of days of sitting in circle on the land with us and the landowner, said, we're at capacity, but we see you, cousin. And we can see it in your heart and in your eyes, that land is a privilege. And one that Indigenous people don't often get access to. Can't really say no, can you? Because that hurts to say no to that. And so, hey, intertribal organization and good community partner, would you guys be willing? And we all just collectively went, huh? Sure. Let us break open our strategic plan and call the board instantly and see what happens, and try and change our entire business model on a fly and see what happens to become a land-based organization in Sonoma County, California, where being a land-based organization means now being responsible for a multi-million-dollar asset. That's the kind of asset that can bring a small organization to its knees in its modern context. But we worked really hard, and we're still fundraising, and we're still going strong. And we now have what you see here, Heron Shadow. Heron Shadow is our process of trying to connect community back to land. Our first step is to step in and say, in order for you to do anything, you first have to re-engage. Let's sit under a tree and listen. Let's watch 4 seasons pass. And when we sit down to do our permaculture design or our agricultural design to figure out how much food we want to grow, when they sit down to interview us and map it out and say, hey, how much food do you guys want to grow here? We say, well, I don't know. How much can we grow? Instead of saying, of the 7.6 acres, we want to make sure that we can cultivate at minimum 6.8 acres of that with a maximum yield of X, Y, and Z, we said, well, I don't know. Let's first restore the traditional ecological landscape and make her healthy and see what healthy land has to give. And then we'll decide how much we can grow and what we can do with it. Right now, we're in our 3rd season. And the first thing, oh, let's go back one picture. So down there on that bottom left corner, this is a really fun moment. Because if you guys might know or remember from your big news cycles the last couple of years in Northern California, we are now in this kind of fun new fire raging season that happens, which is abnormal. A little part of our climate chaos, perhaps, maybe a little echo of maybe not the best land tending relationship that we have with our space here. One of the things that we did when we entered the land is we brought back cultural burns. And what you see in that bottom photo is our first burn on the land. The reason why that photo is so powerful is because we did that burn 30 days after returning post-fire evacuation. And we hand knocked on every neighbor in the community and said, we're going to do a cultural burn here. We were met with a lot of questions, a lot of very real concern, which we absolutely understood. And we said, just come and watch. Come and see, and then let's talk. And by the grace of good neighbors, everybody was pretty okay with that, with a watch and learn model first. And by the end of that first day, we had neighbors asking if we could do theirs too next time. So how do you bridge cultural systems, especially around something like fire ecology conversations and California? These are a big deal. Once you burn and you return the land, you go back to your seed tending and your food growing. We also run a small food justice program network where we're focused on the revitalization of traditional food system and traditional heirloom seeds to nourish our native relatives. This last year, through Heron Shadow and our food cultivation and food partnerships networks, we are very, very proud to have grown, sourced, distributed, and donated over 10,000 pounds of organic and heirloom foods out to our Indigenous community in the Bay Area. All grown here or within our partner network. And this is what some of our growing fields look like. Everything that we do is based in indigenous agricultural models. We're stepping away from commercial agricultural systems. We can have some good conversations around some of that if you guys are interested. One of the ways that we do that is by saying when you the problem with kind of some of our current models and our current systems, even aside from the GMO part of the conversation, which is of course the terrible part of the conversation. But really, when you're looking at our current industrial agricultural models, there's not a whole lot of culture left in it. And we take the culture out of it, really what you've got is agribusiness. And that is what we're trying to address. By donating our foods and removing the economic conversation from what we're doing on our farm practice, is we're saying, we're kind of giving ourselves permission to return to indigenous systems. And we're saying, we want to grow food and feed people because they're hungry, not because we're trying to make money off of the food system. That is Chef Crystal Wapapa. If you are a San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland Peninsula, oh gosh, I don't know, California Bay resident, you should know about the amazing Wapapa's Kitchen. It's the first indigenous restaurant in the Bay Area. It's in Oakland, right over at the right off the steps of the Fruitvale BART station. There's that little beautiful Metropolitan Plaza right there. And Wapapa's Kitchen opened there a year and a half ago now. Chef Crystal, through her good work in the community and her good work at Wapapa's Kitchen, was just nominated for a James Beard Award. And we are very, very honored to be in deep partnership with her. One of the beautiful things that happened when Chef Crystal opened Wapapa's and kind of came out to her in shadow, obviously, as you can see here, she really, really likes the squash we grow. But one of the things that she does at Wapapa's Kitchen is she's revitalizing indigenous food. She's focused solely on that conversation. And within her food network and within her restaurant, she focuses on that conversation of what we call our native food ways, right? The culture of food. And in her restaurant, she's taking it from what's being cooked to the plate to the nourishing of the body. But what we're doing is we're starting with the seed. We're starting that story all the way back at the beginning. And we're saying that that story that happens in the restaurant has a whole nother part of the song. And come hang out. And we invited her entire staff to shut the restaurant down for a day, which they did. And they came out at the beginning of last season and they planted all of the squash for their season. And then we invited them to come out and keep that cultivation relationship going and then come back again and harvest. And now their entire community has a deep relationship with that food system, all the way from seed to plate, to soil, to sky, to the tummy. And it is now part of how we are restoring what we're calling our Indigenous Food Warriors Network. And I love Crystal. She's a beautiful sister. Kickapoo woman. This is her out on the field. We're not only working in the cultivation of foods, but we're also working in the revitalization of wild food landscapes. We have to be careful about what we call food. That there is Indian lettuce. I have no idea what its official name is. I'm sure it has a proper scientific name. But what was really wonderful about it is that Chef Crystal out there on one of the days that they came out to water and check on the squash field. We also happened to have the Indian lettuce growing up in the field by the orchard. So we grabbed a bunch of bags and went out and harvested for a day. And then Crystal called me 3 days later and said, haha, we made the cover shot of East Bay Edible East Bay magazine. That's Indian lettuce on the cover of that magazine right there from Chef Crystal's table. In order for us to really do what we're trying to do, the reconnection of people and land is at the heart of it. When we bring our communities back out to engage in those systems, what it means to be born of the land and to re-engage in healthy community networks and healthy community exchange, We're doing more than having an impact on the ecology system and the food system, and we are having an impact on the human system. And that's really important to us too. Some of our food networks, we're also turning the land into a safe space for Native people to simply gather and be. More than a place to work and grow food and, run riparian zone restoration research partnerships, which we are doing with Arizona State University's Ecological Sustainabilities program. They'll be doing a 2-week research project with us this upcoming summer as we work to restore a watershed system there. But we're also simply a place for Native people to come and gather, to feel safe, to engage in culturally land-based traditions, and to revitalize and renew and restore. And what you see down there, those little camp pictures in that bottom left corner, that was a really beautiful moment when one of our community partners in Oakland, American Indian Child Resource Center, who works with communities and families in the inner city urban landscape there, Native families. They were coming out of COVID lockdown fatigue, and their families and their youth in particular were having a really hard time. And they said, we need to get these kids out of the city. And we had just taken over the land. We weren't really doing much yet, but we said, no problem. And we had our team go home and find tents in their closets and in their cupboards. And we borrowed from neighbors and we pitched a bunch of tents in the orchard. And we invited the inner city Native kids to come out and spend a weekend, not in the city eating McDonald's, but instead hanging out on the land, walking down to the river, helping us cut grass and weed and tend to the trees and just reconnect with everything other than television and Nintendos. And it was a really, really wonderful weekend. And they've been doing it annually now ever since. It's their new youth summer getaway. And it's a really wonderful program that we started coming out of that. So that's just a little bit about what we do. I'll draw your attention to that second URL there, the Native Seed Pod. We run a small podcast. And that is how you would get access to our podcast system, the Native Seed Pod. With our podcast, what we're focused on is the revitalization of traditional ecological knowledge, in particular in relationship to reconnecting people with lands and seeds. And we are now currently recording our 4th season. Our 3rd season completed last year. And we're also very honored that we got nominated for an award for our podcast for in particular episode that we did with the Acoma Pueblo elder Simon Ortiz on the revitalization of Indigenous languages in relationship to landscape. And that was a season 2 episode that was really special. So that's just a little bit about our work and kind of helps to open the doors on some of those conversations about how do we revitalize, how do we reconnect, how do we enter into landscape and conversation as a way to revitalize our communities, wherever our communities are, whatever those are. To me, this is the power of small community and the power of reconnection to land and how those affect all of the ecology around us, whether that's internal or external or otherwise. So I'll kind of pause there, give it a second, and let me know how you guys want to proceed.
Well, it's open. Yeah.
Well, I know.
Frank's excited, people.
My wife and I are going to go to the restaurant. We live in Berkeley. However, I also once, no one knows this about me. We once rented a 90-acre land in Sebastopol to save racehorses from being killed. And we went from 1 horse to 25 on that 90 acres. So I want to know exactly where that 7.5 acres is in Sebastopol, I'm wondering if it's on the same land that once that we no longer rent somebody. Who knows? It's right near there, and I want to go see it. So either I just texted you on LinkedIn, either there, or can you tell me where that land is, and I want to go see it.
Yeah, we're very close to Iron Horse Vineyards.
Okay.
In fact, we share a fence line with Iron Horse,
Okay.
which is oh gosh, about 10-15 minutes. If you're on the 116 driving through Sebastopol and kind of headed out towards like Forestville area,
Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
you're like smack in between Sebastopol and Forestville. In fact, as the crow flies, I'm
Okay.
guessing we're in Forestville. But don't tell Sebastopol that,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I don't understand how the zip codes work out there, but I'm getting to know them.
All right. And all right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The other thing I want to share is that when I help facilitate a diversity group also here in the consciousness, and it's all the same. Aspects of it are all the same. This is what I want to feel us experience, is learning with whatever diversity we each bring to our conscious, to enhance our consciousness. And you have done that today. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you very much. You've you've brought forward the fundamental rhythms and assumptions of someone who lives in relationship with the land. And as we started EASIG, a number of us a couple years ago, it was this desire for our conscious leadership conversations to be in relationship with the land. And to understand reciprocity or regeneration from that internal place rather than from a conceptual place. And land is a privilege. And for some reason today, I understood at another level the way in which that privilege was taken away from your people. And I've understood, it's going to bring tears. I've understood it for years. For some reason today, it touched me in a new way. Yeah. I recently found Lila June and her PhD thesis on understanding the way that land management occurred in the past. And she's somebody that I've said to Michael, I'd love to bring into one of our sessions here to bring some of that understanding forward. And yeah, I think we could take each of these concepts, each of these ways of living, tending the land within our human relationship to the ecosystem, reciprocity, land as a privilege, sitting under a tree and listening, watching the seasons pass, affecting the ecology around us, whether internal or external. We could take each of those and focus our conversations and how that lives inside each of us. So thank you. You've given us a doorway into how to enrich our conversations here. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Lila's beautiful, isn't she? She's amazing. If you guys haven't seen her TED Talk, I highly recommend it. It's like 14 minutes long or something.
Yeah, I've been telling these guys about her because I just think phenomenal. And she blew my mind with the land use practices that led to a fertile land that when the people came over from Europe, of course they could succeed.
Lila did part of her research on our land project.
Oh, cool. Good. Well, I look forward to actually reading her PhD. I've scanned the beginning.
Yeah,
I'm a fan.
She's very special. Yeah, very, very special.
I'll reach out to you to see if we can connect with her and bring her in, if I may.
Is it Shay?
It's Shay.
Hi, Shay.
Sarah. I just wanted to remark on how I love your being, who you are in this conversation, and the grace that you bring with your presence to it. And I find that really admirable. I can feel the care with which you relate not only to the land, but to all the people, all the various stakeholders that you interact with. And I would just love to be that way myself. So you've become a new kind of role model for me in that way. I had two questions for you. On the map that you showed us, there looked to be like a red dot, maybe up in Canada. And I am in Canada at the moment. I wondered is that in Washington? The red dot, one of your.
No, the map. I'm sorry. I could have blown that up a little bit bigger. So sorry.
It's okay. You're on a small screen.
I know.
Right now.
Am I only about this big right now, Shay?
Yeah, you're only this big.
I do my best work when I'm this big. No, that map was of the San Francisco Bay Area, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just kind of a zoom in of that kind of northern part of the San Francisco Bay Area space. So the bottommost dot, or kind of the southernmost dot on that, was the San Francisco Peninsula, and then we just moved up through counties. So we went into Marin County and then up into Sonoma County. So not farther north than Sonoma County, unfortunately. But
Right.
there are incredible people doing work up in your regionality. The Nalaheli Fund is an incredible Indigenous group that's working up in the Washington and Oregon area.
Okay.
That's kind of like a sister organization to us. In fact, their executive director is also part Yaqui woman who I love and adore. They're really wonderful. I can pull up their information if you're looking for somebody who's, kind of up in that area who might be doing similar work. They're a lovely resource.
Well,
Yeah.
I actually spend part of the year in Canada, and because I'm Canadian, and part of the year in California.
Yes.
So I also noticed, because before this talk, I looked up your website, and I noticed that you have a posting for a farm manager.
We do.
Are you still looking for someone?
It's currently an open position. We our amazing young native farmer who has helped us for the last 6 years, leading all of our our farming work. Super proud that all of this incredible farming and agricultural work that we're getting recognized for right now has been led by a young Native youth woman. She's just incredible. Her name is Maya Harjo. And actually, she was just recognized at the 2023 Eco Farm Conference out here at Asilomar as they just released their Freshie Awards for their junior, young farmers who are breaking ground and becoming models and doing incredible work. So she just won their inaugural Freshie Award for the work that she's doing with us at Heron Shadow. And she's pretty incredible. But she's also, we're so sad, is finally going back to school and finishing her master's program. So while we're sad, we're also deeply happy and very, very supportive. In fact, when I wrote her letter of recommendation for grad school, I emailed it to her and said, congratulations, good luck. And I can't talk to you for the next week because now I'm sad. And that was how we had to handle it. And I'm still pretending like if I ignore it, it'll go away and she'll stay forever and ever. But we are looking for a new farm manager, and deep in the middle of that fun search.
Okay.
Spread the word.
That's what I wanted to know, because I didn't know how current the posting was. So I will.
Still interviewing. In fact, I have interviews on the land tomorrow.
Thank you. Good luck in finding a person as wonderful as she is.
Thank you. We have our work cut out for us. It's a good problem to have. Look, Frank has his hand up.
Yeah. So first, gratitude for what you're channeling. Sorry, I'm repeating what you've heard from others, but that when we get to connect offline, I'll share the similarity of our journeys, but that's not the point where I want to go here. How did you find your path?
Me personally?
Yes.
Yeah. I have a multiple personality disorder. That's like on the healthy tip. How would I put this? Here's an interesting thing I've noticed around kind of our dominant world system is that we seem to be a system of reductionism. We seem to be a system that peels back the noise to get to the one salient truth, right? Get rid of all that extra stuff to get down to that one little thing that we know is the specialty, is the truth, is the thing. That's our sciences are based on this model. How we assign and value to knowledge system is kind of based on this model, right? Like we have this reductionism theory. And it's never really worked for me. It's kind of been hard to understand because I always was at odds with that. I always thought, well, in order to understand something, don't you have to see it in its holism? Right? So my problems when I entered into sciences and these like larger modern contexts is I kept thinking, well, every time you took something away, the noise you removed, what did you leave behind? Because you peeled something off and you dropped it away and you went, well, that's not important to my understanding of the pursuit of the one salient truth. And then you dropped it on the ground and kept walking down the path. And there I was, this little person running around, picking up all the things going like, why do you guys keep dropping that stuff? I kind of feel like there's magic there somewhere. And that's kind of been me. So I came into this world with that rhythm, right? I'm an artist. I'm a dancer. I've been a dancer since I was 4. My husband and I have a cultural arts and education company. This is the Sewan dance part of my bio, if anybody read that. We have been doing cultural arts exchange work internationally for, gosh, if you put our careers together, probably about 30 years of doing that exchange through the lens of cultural arts as a dancer, as an artist. In fact, most recently, before lockdown, we were partnered with the US Embassy and we did multiple tours through New Zealand and France and kind of different areas. So this has been a big part of my life as an artist. And yet I went out into the world and I went, okay, well, but modern dominant framework says I got to get a job and I got to like pay my stuff and I got to be a like legitimate contributing adult in this world. And I happened to be in my young 20s at the beginning of the .com boom out here in the tech Silicon Valley. So I just hit the tech wave and went for it. Why not? That's what everybody else is doing. And I had a wonderful corporate career. And I was still dancing. And I was still growing weird plants on my deck because I didn't have a backyard. And then one day my husband was like, honey, the deck's gonna fall. That's a lot of dirt. And I'm like, yes, but it's in the sky because it can't be on the ground because I'm not on the ground. So we're solving problems here. And these were kind of these ongoing conversations. And then literally one day, It's like, wow, corporate America, not for me anymore. And I went away and I actually just decided to go back to school. I quit and I went back to school. I did the really, really crazy thing. And I left my paycheck and I went back to school. And at the same time, my husband was a professor, or is still, but at that moment was a professor at San Francisco State University American Indian Studies Department. And he kept saying to me, hey, you got to meet my colleague, Melissa Nelson. Melissa runs the Cultural Conservancy. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm a recovering corporateaholic. Leave me alone. I don't want to work. I'm having fun in the pursuit of my academics. And yay, look at me, I'm a book nerd. And that was my new happy space. And he kept saying, no, but you really should meet Melissa. And then one day I met Melissa and I went for a walk with her. And that was the end of that. And I joined the Cultural Conservancy. And that was because I had no idea that I could marry my professional work with my service to community. But I wouldn't give up the corporate stint for anything. Because what I learned there and am now applying inside of this nonprofit context in service to the restoration of cultural work is really wonderful. So really all I had to do was kind of follow the path beneath my feet and try and do it in a good way. And be willing to say that as a human being, a really, really awesome paycheck feeds the closet, but not the soul. And be okay with that reflection. But I grounded all of that in my cultural context. And that's not to say that I grounded that in an Indigenous context. I grounded it in a cultural context. Each one of us has that connection somewhere inside of our ancestral lineage that's connected to some amazing landscape somewhere on this planet. I'm a Yaqui woman, yes, from the Sonoran Desert region of the Americas. I can tell you, I can go and sit in the desert for days. And I can feel I'm home. But I got to tell you, Frank, there is something inside of me when I'm sitting in that desert. There is a song that calls from this whole other piece of land on a whole nother side of this planet. That was a 1,000-year-old song too. It goes back to the first peoples on this rock in Ireland that was about the first relationship to that ecology. Because as human beings, our first anything was born from the land. Our first language was born from the land. We entered this world and we didn't go, hey, Google, what's the weather in Sacramento? We entered this land and we went, other human being thirsty, river. River. Tree. Food. Berry. Animal. Home. Tree. Everything of who we are as human beings was born first from our connection to our original landscape. And those are songs that sing in all of us, not just Native people. Is this being recorded? No disrespect to my Native family. We got to be clear about that. We all have that. It's everywhere. All of us. We don't have the lid on the Native, first land relationship spirituality in the Native Americas. Everybody's got that.
So last thing I'm going to say, and I know there's probably other people that have a lot to say, but just I wanted to thank you for sort of setting the stage of there is no such thing as Native American or Indigenous people in the way that you framed it. and that it's cultural, not indigenous. Those are such critical unifying ways that can help people not feel guilty around so many diversity things and so many root things. And also, lastly, thanks for reminding us all in your much better words that everything and everyone is connected. Thank you.
Oof. I want to share what Shay said, but oh, sorry, Alan. I'll be brief. It is so clear that I can feel that all your intelligence, none of your intelligence has used one word in strictly linear left frontal lobe energy. It has all come through totally authentic spiritual energy within you. Every second, you're authentically sharing who you are and how you feel. And it's such a treat to just even receive conversation like that. What a gift. Thank you.
Alan, you're up, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I mentioned before everybody joined that I am deeply trying to understand what we can learn without cultural appropriation from indigenous cultures. But I've discovered in the process that Europeans have indigenous cultures too, like the Celtic structure, Celtic culture. And I've been, reading Hildegard from Bingen, some of the medieval mystics, and they were deeply having that relationship with the land and with everything else that you described. So sometimes Europeans can feel a bit of orphans. Why have they suppressed all of this? But it's still in them. It's still in us. I'm from the Vosges Mountains in the northwestern part of France, and we had some traditions there. I had to leave it when I was 9, so that was too bad. But going back to what some of the others have said, going back to what is important, the relationship to the land, the relationship to other people living in the land. And thank you for this beautiful way of expressing it that you have. Thank you.
Hi, John.
Thanks, Sarah. I don't want to eat up the clock echoing what other people have said, but I really appreciate not just the message, but your spirit. And I have a question, which maybe is a whole nother thing. But so I live in Oakland. I've spent a lot of time in San Francisco. And who are the Ohlone? Is this the group that the Westerners gave the name to what we would call the Bay Area? Would they call themselves Ohlone? And I was on a ranch yesterday in Sonora. Wait, Sonora? Outside of Fremont. And it's in the East Bay. And we're considering doing workshops there. The story isn't important, but the land just spoke to me. And the trees were arguably hundreds of years old. Like, who knows? Growing like all over the place. And so I don't have any big questions or whatever, but I just wonder what this land was like 300 years ago.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, the good news is there's historical account. So we actually know what it was like prior to, for lack of a better word, colonization, right?
Yeah. Is the Ohlone way a reference that you would recommend? You know the book?
Yeah, by Malcolm Margulie. Yes. So yes and no, right? I would say yes.
That's why I went
with the asterisk, right? So let me go back to your first, like you had kind of a couple questions tangled in there. Let me go back to one of the first ones. Ohlone is an appropriate name, but it's not for one group, it's many. There's many different Ohlone bands. Okay, so, and you can't lump them all together. Nobody likes being lumped together when they're different, right? This is a little nod to our diversity council. Yes, BIPOC. What does that mean? Hi, BIPOC. We didn't come up with that term. You know, indigenous, it's a powerful term. It means good and important things. Yes, absolutely. It can get you into a system of conversation that you need to get to, and acronyms serve a purpose for that. But let's be just, you know, the BIPOC is just another acronym for Indigenous people where they don't get to show up first again.
Right.
And we, you know, as much as folks want to lump us into categories, nobody really likes being lumped into categories. So Ohlone is in a similar situation. Ohlone, there's many different bands of Ohlone, and Ohlone people span the East Bay and the Southern Peninsula. Okay, so you have this kind of relationship that goes there. When you get into the North Bay, you kind of let go of Ohlone and you start getting into Coast Miwok, Southern Pomo territories, and then you go up further north, Paiute, Wintu, Wailaki, right? You start going, it spans out. But yes, if you're in Oakland, you're in Ohlone territory. And right now, if you're in Oakland, you have voice and representation with one of the coolest growing Indigenous groups around. This is the Sogorea Land Trust. The Sogorea Land Trust was just created and launched by an urban Indigenous women's collective. They are incredible. Go look at Sogorea Land Trust. They are a model for community work and community resourcing, and also kind of what you're asking for, John, even for non-Indigenous people, to use them as a resource. How do I understand this story? How do I understand my own engagement? They've created a model for reparations for East Bay people, and who say, you know, I want to find a way to give back, but I understand that's hard insider-outsider conversations to bridge. How do I do that? And they say, well, they put a little calculator right on their website, and they said, if you want to do it based off your income bracket, here's a little income calculator, and you guys can give a little percentage to us as an annual donation. That's one way you can engage. And they've just come up with wonderful ways to get creative with it. So that's them. The Ohlone Way, as a book by Malcolm Margulie, is an incredible resource. There are a number of Indigenous communities in the Bay Area that very much recognize that even though it's not written by an Indigenous person, it's written with a tremendous amount of Indigenous relationship and knowledge inside of it. So yes,
I really felt a presence of them.
It's real. Yeah. But it is a narrative, and it is created from the mind of a non-Indigenous person. So you just have to know that going in.
Yeah.
It's kind of like hanging out with me. I don't speak for all Indigenous people. I only speak for me. Right. So
I appreciate you bringing your Irish side in too. You know, it makes it, well, I mean, real is sort of we've kind of overused that a bit, but there's some authenticity of this is who I am and this is coming through me as well. Yeah. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. The California landscape, when Spaniards arrived on boats, they sent accounts back, written accounts back to the church. There's lots of documentation that describe the landscape of California. They describe what they arrived to as a Garden of Eden. And that the native people ran around and burned things all of the time, and they couldn't figure out why. Like, we don't understand what these people are doing. They're always burning fires, and they're always spending time in the rivers and the waters, and they're always digging topsoil. Lots of California Native folks were kind of picked up in the kind of mission colonial gold rush days, the moniker diggers. They're digger Indians. If you guys see that in historical account, you'll see that published, the California Digger Indians. And that's because native California was being tended to by human hands since time immemorial. For tens of thousands of years, the indigenous people up and down this coast were engaged in daily land practice as part of their tradition. And fire wasn't a big, scary, awful, evil entity that needed to be controlled or managed. Fire was Uncle Bob, who you invited over for dinner. And yeah, just like any relative, when they come over for dinner, they can be unruly, sure, but mostly they're just cool Uncle Bob who's here and telling his stories, and then he goes home again at the end of the night. California Native people's relationship with fire is one of family. It's one of deep respect and one of the kind of unspoken ways within which California was colonized most dramatically was through the removal of fire. And it's not something folks talk about, right? The mission system's pretty bad. You put the gold rush right on top of that, and it's really hard. You know, nobody ever wants to play the who got it worse game because that's just a terrible game. But California Native people, they got many waves, not just one or two. It was many, many waves and ongoing waves, right? Right after the gold rush came the colonization of the agriculture, and right after the agriculture came the cows. In fact, there's a whole historical system of Northern California's agricultural study and research that's called the colonization of the Northern California landscape, and the damaging effect that had on the water table, on the landscape, on the kind of quote unquote green, sustainable, systems that livestock and all of that happens. And that even impacts today. You gotta drive down the I-5, go hang out in Coalinga. Guess what? Did you guys know Coalinga ran out of water in November? They had to buy water rights at something like 10 times the normal rate off of the private water market. What they would normally buy from the city at a couple $100,000 for their annual allotments. The city said, sorry, no more allotments for you guys. They had to go out on the open water market, and they spent $1 million. And it only got them 6 months. Water matters here. So does fire. And that's what it means to be stepping into the ecological story of California. We can write those balanced systems. We have a chance to get back to what it means to be in good relationship with the landscape here. Bill.
So I'm curious how you think about population growth. When Christ walked the earth, there's maybe 180 million people. When the Mayflower landed, there were maybe 500 million people, and now we have 8 billion people. And I think the earth has not changed in size. And as someone who's more in touch with relationship with the earth. I'm just curious how you think about that.
I don't presume to know more than Mother. She's a very knowledgeable system, isn't she? She knows way more than we do. This amazing earth. And I think she has all kinds of systems for balance. And I think she has all kinds of capacity. And I think she has all kinds of ways within which she tends this system. I would say, Bill, we could spend a whole nother session just on this conversation, because really what we get down to is the whole system network. We are grandmother spider's children. We are in the center of a web. And as we pull on the pieces of the strings of that web, as any individual or group or anything, we're pulling here, but there's slack here. This is a system that does this. And we as humans, for tens of thousands of years, didn't necessarily have capacity problems until our human system got in the way of our understanding of our ecology system. When we went to one entity speaking for all, one entity responsible for feeding the masses, what we did is we circumvented the power of small communities. Right? Because the reality of what those previous systems were was not, I have strawberries 365 days a year, and that's how I'm supporting the food system. It was strawberries come in the spring because they're a high vitamin C source, because the earth system knows that as humans, we just spent 5 months in darkness hiding in the winter months. And when we come out of that, we are deficient in vitamin D and vitamin C. So we're going to create the kinds of foods that support the human deficiency system in order to meet the natural rhythm. And then when that deficiency system is met, that food will go away. And the next thing that is next available is the next thing the ecology calls for in order to meet the needs of that system. And remember, that ecological system is different the planet over. So why are we shipping strawberries to Spain in September? She knows what she needs. And if we maybe shift and adjust our rhythms back into an ecologically sound space, there's plenty of food. Food scarcity is a fallacy. The truth is access. That's the question. You ever hang out back behind the grocery store at the end of the shift? Break your heart. There's plenty of food, my friend. I saw a hand.
Oh, Mary, go ahead.
So, hello, Sarah. Thank you for being here. I think this is, I don't know, maybe, I think this is one of the few, if the only EASIG conversation where I've been brought to tears like 3 times, at least, if not more. So
I'm sorry, and you're welcome.
No, having my soul moved is such a gift. So thank you. And I just want to acknowledge that I live on unceded Wiyot territory in Humboldt County. and that just north of the Wiyot territory is Yurok territory. And the Yurok people have been, it just connects to your ideas about fire and water, because they are around the Klamath River and they are teaching the Forest Service traditional ways of burning to protect our forests. So it is such a gift. And you are such a gift and a blessing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. The Yurok have an incredible model, if anybody's interested in that. Thank you for bringing it up. They have an incredible partnership model with the state, with CAL FIRE, trying to look at wild forest tending in traditional systems and the impact that that has on not just the health of the forest system and the fuel load there, but also on the impacts of the river. A lot of those big burns that happen as large fire raging storms, they burn at temperatures that cultural burns don't burn at. They're much more destructive. They also burn much faster that cultural fires don't burn at. So their devastation rate is just very different. And so the fallout impacts of that are different as well. And in fact, Mary, right now, Yurok is having a big problem because those last few rounds of fire scarring have left water runoff that is choking out the river system and impacting the salmon run. So it's, these are the many years later, right? The ongoing relationship of that system. So if they can get those burns pulled down and tended into the fire system the right way, then instead of that kind of landslide, kind of fire scarring, burn runoff material that hits the water, instead of like large deluges of that, instead what they get is they get the microbiome that comes off of the biocarbon from the cultural burn that enters the water system that the salmon love. And then they come out and they like, yum, 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 yum. And it's not just the salmon. The salamanders do it, the moles do it, the birds do it, the beavers do. Everybody loves that biofuel. And so just bringing back that one family member fire back to the ecology impacts the entire circle.
Yeah, and I think you probably know more about this than I do, that I believe the state was going to stop the salmon fishing, which is so integral to the culture of the Yurok people.
Yeah, this is a good like follow up to the bill question, right? Around like capacity and food system capacity. Because we do this, right? So humans overfished the waters outside the San Francisco Bay Area and we killed off all of the abalone. Go us. And now there is a statewide moratorium on abalone that they thought would only last a couple of years, and now it's in perpetuity. You know why? Because they killed so many abalone that they're not bouncing back. And originally in San Francisco Bay Area waters, we had upwards of 8 species of traditional abalone. We're now down to 1. We only have the red abalone left, and they're desperate to save her. So even native people are no longer allowed to go out and do abalone collecting, though we are in the California Native Coast Miwok communities. Abalone is their staple. They are considered abalone people. The same thing starting to happen with salmon. And you would think we would learn. We'd be like, oh, look, we didn't do that right. Let's get better at this and maybe not over farm our salmon. But oops. We happen to be there again. And so maybe the ways that folks can help kind of individually is to not engage in farmed salmon practices, don't support farm salmon farms, and maybe, take a year off from salmon in the restaurants and give that beautiful little fish time to rebound and regroup and come back together. Though we know we love sushi. I know folks love their sushi. But a year off from salmon hamachi should make be okay. Okay, Hi.
Hi, Sarah. This is Val of Tan now.
Hi.
Thank you for your presence and your love. I have a two-parter question. And the first one is, you've just talked about really, really hard things. And you talked about it with so much love and forgiveness and healing. I would like to know, what are your personal practices recharge and maintain this well of love, really? And before you say connect to the land, which I know, and I'm a huge believer of that, I wanted to have the second part of my question is about if where you've been called is the urban, is the city, that's where you're supposed to shop and serve. What are some ways we can bring both the agri and the cultural part into urban dwelling systems?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's hard to be disconnected in the urban network, isn't it? It's a little strange. It can feel a little unrooted from time to time. Wow, thank you for that really special compliment. Can I record you for my husband saying that I'm a love bubble? Please. You know, gosh, we really are imperfect human beings, aren't we? Our little tribe of humans. We're really, really good at some dark stuff. But I think everybody's pretty clear on the pain. I think everybody's pretty clear about the history. I think everybody as individual human beings on this planet has to walk their path with that. Folks tend to, some be knowingly ignorant, others tend to be overly informed, and then there's everything in between. And wherever you find yourself on that journey, as you engage with knowledge systems and become more informed, it's very, very easy to get angrier and angrier. Especially when you engage in Indigenous conversations or engage in conversations where humans were just generally awful to other humans. It's not an only Indigenous conversation, that's a human conversation. And we have an option, we have choices as individual human beings. We certainly need those that are shouting at the sky. We certainly need those activist voices that are there yelling and making sure that we're being held accountable. Because we have to, somebody's got to hold us accountable. And that's a very powerful voice, and it's a voice that needs to rise. But I don't know about you guys, but my ears can get sensitive. And when everybody's yelling about the anger and the pain, my ears can fill up. And my heart can fill up, and my spirit can fill up. And then all of a sudden I find that I'm only ever surrounded with the anger and the devastation of that reality. And then I make a choice. And I say, not everybody can hear everybody when they're yelling. Sometimes people need to hear a soft voice. Sometimes people need to know that there's another way to engage in that conversation. My choice is to be on the love and beauty team. That's me. That's our family. We're the love and beauty family. Are we not educated? I'm deeply educated. I am a specialist in California Native history. I know the really, 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 really awful stuff. And it's awful, guys. It's the worst part of the human nightmare come to life. It's not that far away in our history. That's the fallacy. The fallacy is that it's somehow way over there, and it's not. It's kind of right here. And we still see it. We still see reflections of that in our daily lives. And yet we have an option. The reason why my husband and I named our cultural arts organization Sewan Dance is because the Sewa is a language word from our community. As Yaqui people, the Sewa, it means flowers. And in our cultural system, in our Yaqui cultural system, we have a whole reality that says that when you step into the world, your first step should be to step into the Sewa. Because evil cannot live in the face of beauty. And so that's how we try. It doesn't mean that we're not educated enough to have those conversations about the hard stuff, because we are. It means that we have a knowing choice to say that as soon as you're done listening to the people who are yelling really important truths at the top of their lungs, once they've got your attention, if you also need to hear this other side of it too, come, because I'm here and ready to have that part of the conversation with love and beauty too. I don't know that it's a daily practice. I think it's actually a moment by moment practice. And I rely, I'm not going to lie, you're right, it's a cliche, but it's such a good one. I go outside every day. And I teach my daughter to start her day saying hello to the trees and to the sun and to the creepy, crawly, insect slithery family that she cannot see, and to the furry, fuzzy, fuzzball, snoofly family that runs around in the form of deers and foxes and squirrels, and to the feathered friends family that fly in the sky. You say hi and good morning to everybody. And then you say good night to everybody too. And you try and keep it really simple. Because even in the city, there's bees looking for flowers to pollinate. So plant some flowers on your deck.
Thank you. Well received.
Myron.
Thank you, Sarah. So rich, beautiful, and painful. It's all there. I could spend a lot of time thanking you for so much illumination, and I'll just bring one point of illumination for me in the midst of it. And it is that paying attention to the internal, when it's so easy to be full of the conceptual. The thread through everything that you have shared is life. And life speaks for itself. And I was particularly pained with, the acronyms. And another acronym where Indigenous people are not first. Why the acronym? See and join the people. And I'm not asking for a cure for the acronyms or the conceptual, because they're going to be there, because they are. What you're offering, Sarah, is, as I received it, is an invitation to go beyond. And that invitation goes beyond feeling. because the actual life sometimes does not have feeling at all. Sometimes it does not have words. It has its own voice from its own existence, and that's your invitation. Thank you for being you and all that is with and beyond.
Well, thanks everybody. I finally just looked at the corner of my laptop and saw the time. I haven't done that yet today. But there it is. I'm not sure how much time this circle normally holds, but I want to be really respectful to everybody's day. And I know a number of folks have already dropped off a little bit, but if I'm happy to stay and keep answering questions and dialoguing, but also know that people need to move on to their days too. So yeah, I just want to check in with everybody in the group and see where we're at with our rhythm today.
It turns out, we have this idea of at least 1 hour, and then some people stay for another half hour, but it turns out that there's a pretty substantial group that stays until about noon California time. So I thank you for respecting everybody's time, and we have to respect your time too.
You warned me, Michael. You had me clear my calendar. I was good.
That's right.
I
Okay.
follow directions
Okay,
occasionally.
yeah, that's right. I didn't know when you didn't know what EASIG stood for. I thought it was kind of neglectful in some respect, but anyway, so you got that message. So anyway, so let's continue and see what happens.
So I didn't know what EASIG stood for either. I
You
thought it
didn't
was
know?
environmental action.
It turns out I wasn't
Sustainability.
the only one. I
Yeah.
feel much better. Thank you, Craig. I'm so glad I was
Me
not
too.
alone.
Yeah.
John, look at this. We're solving conscious leadership guilds like nomenclature issues right now.
That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the S was for sustainability. I didn't know it was the special. I thought it was environmental action sustainability interest group. Not
Yeah.
So there. We're as bad as corporate America, where we
That's
just spout acronyms, assuming everyone else knows what they mean. So that has crept into the Conscious Leadership Guild like a stranger in the night. I just want to say thank you. Yeah, this has just felt really engaging at the level of heart, which I appreciate. And the other thing I appreciate is, I caught that at the beginning. Where you said, and there's some Irish, some European here too. And so the all of us-ness that we bring. And then the other thing that we're just kind of touching on, like the love and joy, is and this is a whole other topic, but this is something I've been approaching from kind of the queer perspective, is we can identify as our suffering and as our pain, and as the great tragedies that have befallen us and continue to befall us. that creates compassion, which opens hearts, which can create change. And so it's got a role to play. But what if we just choose to identify as our joy, as our love, as our specialness? And maybe that's enough. So you've gotten my wheels, a lot of different wheels are turning up here. So I thank you for that. And I live 5 minutes from your office. So look for a LinkedIn connection.
Yeah, come on down. And this is true of anybody too. I don't know, there's a few folks that seems are out of state, but if you're in the area, come walk the land with us.
Yeah.
Come visit Heron Shadow and see a little bit about what we do kind of firsthand, and maybe take a deep breath under one of our beautiful 250-year-old walnut trees. Yeah. Thank you, Craig. Mr. Alon.
Yes, I saw a lot of young people in the pictures that you show. You did show us.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what role do elders play if they
Hi,
are?
Greg.
So yeah, absolutely. Our educational models are based off of connecting elder knowledge holders with the youth. That's what we do. So in most of our systems, our traditional ecological knowledge holders are elders. They're kind of the last, kind of knowledge holders. And we work in all of our educational systems to connect them with those systems. Right. So all of our workshops, pretty much everything we do has at least an elder and a young person involved, no matter what. And we try and model all of our youth development across the scope of our organization. So it's not just that we run internships on the ground with growing food or traditional ecological knowledge. Like, for example, we've got a young Native apprentice right now who she's deeply interested in traditional weaving materials. So we have her on the ground working with one of our elders. She's doing a year-long apprenticeship working with him on the restoration of the riparian zone, because as we restore the traditional watershed and bring back the willows and the sedges, we bring back the materials that were used for traditional weaving, and that impacts the health of the ecology and the system, which allows us to interweave language into it. Because once you've got the traditional ecology back, you can go back and use the original language to revitalize the connection to those systems. This is what this plant was originally called. This is what it was originally used for. This is what this landscape originally called for, and the tending of that seasonality inside of that landscape. And that's kind of just one example of how we pull that through. Another one, for example, was tobacco. We were contacted by another one of our community partners, California Indian Museum and Cultural Center in Santa Rosa. They run Native Youth Ambassadors program, and they had identified in their own circles that combating tobacco, smoking and kind of inappropriate tobacco use amongst young people in their particular California Native community up there in Santa Rosa was a really big problem. So we partnered with their youth program and did a full season last year where we reclaimed, we call it decolonizing tobacco. And we brought back traditional tobacco teachings through the youth program. So we went back and did traditional seed work with tobacco. We grew it, we harvested, we dried, we put back into ceremonial pouches, and we reintroduced tobacco in its original format back into the system so that the kids were experiencing tobacco not as a cigarette or as e-vape, but instead the traditional plants that they now have engaged with in a traditional practice and now burn in traditional ceremonial formats on fire for prayer. So we reclaimed the plant as a knowledge system, and that was the foundation of the educational program for that format. And that was led in partnership with 3 traditional ecological knowledge elders and knowledge holders, and then the youth program. And we did it over the course of many months. So those are just examples of how we step into that conversation.
And there again, the connection with the land and the use of the resources of the land, or the possibilities, the gifts of the land is key. And
yeah.
this is one of the questions I'm asking myself as we are creating this community of regenerative elders, that it cannot just exist on the internet. It has the local base as well, where people can connect, not just to each other, but also to the land.
Yeah, well, we have to be careful of that in our particular community, especially around the ongoing community health concerns. I'm not going to lie, the pandemic was exceptionally brutal on our elders, and many of our elders are last language keepers. They're last knowledge keepers. They're, especially in California, where the federal recognition conversation and engagement in that federal programming is reliant upon your capacity to have language keepers and knowledge holders. When they go, your tribe goes. Yes. So community health issues and meeting the needs of community health issues is very unique in the Indigenous sphere. So while we can invite as many of our community members as we want to come together and in person, if their community is not yet ready to be in person and to commingle with other community members, we have to respect that, and we move all of our teachings to online in order to do it.
Yeah.
So you're always, this goes back to Myron's beautiful comment on the acronyms, because Black, Indigenous, people of color, I'm sorry, but the needs of the Black community are very unique, and they're not the same as the needs of the Indigenous community. How dare us try and conflate those needs together in the same thing? That's just rude to Black people and Indigenous people. Sorry, but it is. We don't have the same needs. And Indigenous communities, as I was mentioning, guys, go back to the very beginning. How many different tribes are there? You think all their needs are the same? Yeah. Come on. It's not. And we have to be really careful of that. So while we have good intentions to say we're going to do a program this way because we know that this is the right thing that's needed, be careful that you don't think you know better than everybody else. And be careful that you're not creating solutions with the best of intentions that are not actually meeting the need of the community, right? This was a really good lesson learned in the pandemic, really, really good one, because when else would we ever have an opportunity to say, hey, Lasan Ohlone community in Oakland, come on up to the land, come do a land tending day with us. We've got the youth from California Indian Museum and Cultural Center just down the road. Lasan community goes, nope. I got 4 elders. They're my last ones. No, we're not commingling, but we'll come to the land if you guys will clear the deck and just let us have the land, because we really need it. We need to get out there and nourish ourselves. Would you guys be willing to do that? And we go, absolutely. And we clear the deck, all programming gone. We take the staff all the way down to minimum staff just so that they can host. We mask them up even outside, and we go, okay, because that's what the Lasan Ohlone community needs in order to nourish themselves. And that's their requirement. We don't get in the way of that requirement. We simply say, if we have in some way to offer you what you need, we'll do the best we can. We don't try and offer it as a solution. We don't know what their problems are. We're not going to get out there and say that we're solution oriented to their problems. It's coming at it from a dominant framework. Instead, we're simply going to lean into good old Kevin Costner in the 1990s film, if you build it, they will come. We're going to fill the dreams of this thing. You're going to build it and make it available and then let folks need it and use it as they need to, because they know what they need. It's not our job to solve that problem for everybody. It's only our job to be a strong circle so that people can come get what they need from us and go back into their communities and be nourished and do what they need to do in their spaces.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Sorry, was the 90s reference too much? Oh my God, I love movies, you guys. I can't let it go. I'm a total
That's great.
movie nerd.
I am too. Yeah.
I'm aware of that I'm going to need to get off, and what I'm hungering for is some sort of closure so that I don't filter away some way to bring this beautiful session into a feeling of drawing in the threads of all that have been here together in community. So Michael, I don't know if you have something planned or if I can support.
Well, I did have a thought, but it probably would be best if Sarah said something at the end. But there have been so many things you've said that are kind of quotable and meaningful to me. And when I get the recording of this, I'm going to go through there and pick out some of the things you said. I have two things here. One that I missed was what you said about flowers, which I thought was so meaningful to me. But I just have two. One is, I don't presume to know more than the mother. That moved me. And then you said, evil cannot live in the face of beauty. I know there's more than that, but those are sort of keystones that I took from this. So do you have anything more, Sarah?
I said those things.
You said those things, yeah. That's right. I'll put down that as a quote too.
I said that.
Said those things.
Those are my favorites too. I wrote both of those down.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Karen. I have no particular
I guess I would
way to
say that
close.
there's been a lot of beauty here and very little evil.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you for the invitation to join you guys. Really, it was very kind. And thanks, Michael, for hanging in there. I don't know. Yeah, welcome to behind the scenes, everybody. It took him like 6 months to find me and get me connected and scheduled correctly. My life is a little bit busy these days, but I'm glad we finally got connected and we're able to have this good conversation together. So thank you again for the invitation.
No.
If you know, please stay in touch. Michael has my contact information. You're finding me in LinkedIn and other ways. Please come walk the land. Please listen to our podcast and listen to much more beautiful and incredible voices than my own. That podcast is filled with, you know, when they said I got to produce a podcast, they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to sit at the feet of my grandparents.
Yes.
And listen to their stories. That's what I want. And that's what we try to create. So I hope that it feels that way and that people can engage in that. If you're in California and you're particularly interested in those fire ecology conversations, we've got a handful of podcasts that are dedicated to that conversation. So feel free to listen to that too. And even to the podcast with Crystal. It's the only one that I interviewed. All of the others, we lean into our other hosts. But the Crystal one was really fun because she's my sister and we just giggled. If you just want to listen to us giggle and talk about cool food, native foods, then listen to the Crystal Wapapaw one. That was a lot of fun. But thanks, you guys. There's Karen. We don't always close circles because the energy that's created is not meant to stop. You know, we have to be careful when we create ceremonies and rituals that come with always and musts, because we let go of the beauty of spontaneity when we do that, and we let go the beauty of letting the universe let that path fall beneath our feet. So I would encourage you to not close this circle. Maybe that's how we'll end today. Let's not close this circle. Let's keep it open. Let's keep the rhythm and the dance alive, and carry that good vibration out into a good day that hopefully impacts another human and helps them smile too.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sarah. Would you mind putting the podcast address in the chat? I didn't get it.
I think it, yeah.
Unless it's already on what you sent, Michael.
There it is. Right there.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you,
Hey,
Mike.
Val, I'm so glad you got to join. See, don't I have cool friends?
No, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for bringing us together.
Thank you.
And for finding her and
Yeah.
for your beautiful write-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.